Good morning, everyone. Welcome to At Home with Hayley. I am Hayley Andrews, and this is, of course, At Home with Hayley. So hopefully all of you guys have had an awesome week. I genuinely have had the best week ever, and so much good news, and hopefully that will continue as well. So hopefully some of my good luck, guys, will rub off onto you, and we can all have an awesome week ahead as well. So we have a little bit of a different twist this morning. So we have an awesome guest who I'll introduce a little later on. I'm going to give you a short update, but then share a few slides with you, and hopefully that will be good for you to be able to understand your legal responsibility as a landlord and make sure that everybody is confident in terms of getting their house in order before they move forward with any tenancy because of all of the changes that have happened recently. So guys, I'm going to just ask you very quickly, can you all hear me? I've got good morning messages coming through, so I'm assuming that is thumbs up to say that everybody can hear me loud and clear. So I'm going to jump straight into my update and share a few slides with you as well. Right, so as we spoke about last week, of course, the stay has been extended. So let's talk a little bit about that and what it means to you and how it's going to change us with evictions, etc., and notices moving forward. So the notice period as of the 29th of August, so last Saturday, is now a 6 months notice period. Notices prior to last Saturday will not need to give 6 months notice. Prior should still retain the 3 months notice period. Where notice is served as a result of rent arrears or misleading information, 6 months notice will be required. However, if the tenants arrears exceed 6 months, then the notice will automatically reduce to 4 weeks. In the case of domestic abuse or riots, 2 weeks notice will be sufficient. Where landlords are seeking possession as a result of antisocial behaviour, 4 weeks notice is sufficient. And lastly, where tenants are required to vacate the property due to failed follow-up right to rent checks, 12 weeks notice will be sufficient. So it's very clear on how we can move forward with different scenarios and situations. And so the Coronavirus Act has been effectively extended through to the 31st of March 2020 in England and Wales. This is really to support the tenants through autumn and winter months with widespread announcements on redundancies. Great for tenants, but of course not so great for us as landlords, if we are grappling or struggling with pre-COVID rent arrears and antisocial behaviour, etc. The government has been urged, so there's many leading bodies that are actually urging the government now to help renters clear COVID-19 debts and urging them to provide financial help to private renters that have plunged into rent arrears due to the pandemic. Personally, and this really is just a personal opinion and an observation, of watching what people are doing, looking at statistics and things like that. And some of you may agree, and some of you may, point blank disagree, and that's fine. We're all entitled to our opinion. But I'm not entirely sure why tenants have not been able to pay their rent. There's been a lot of help out there from the government. If people have been furloughed, they've been paid up to 80% of their wages. If people were on benefits, then they are still in receipt of those benefits. If they are a company, they have been given company grants and loans at 0 interest for 12 months. And no repayment for 12 months. So to help with the loss of revenue there's lots and lots of help that has been put out there. So I really can't see why people haven't been able to pay their rent. Of course, there will be some self-employed people that are, falling through that barrier and not able to get help or very little help out there for certain sectors. But overall, guys, majority of the people have actually been able to tick those boxes and be entitled to the help that has been put out there from the government. So I think tenants are taking advantage personally. Not in every case, of course, there are genuine cases that are out there, but I think tenants are taking advantage and choosing not to pay instead of not being able to pay. And just judging, I'm not just saying this, and luckily for me, majority of my tenants are paying, and we have very few cases of where they're not, or they're not paying the full amount. So I've been very lucky in that instance. But I know lots of people that are actually struggling. Looking into statistics and judging by the footfall on the high streets and, corresponding data around that, and retail data, that's been reported that actually people are out there spending money, sales are up. So is it a fact that people can't pay, or they just don't want to pay? And I genuinely think, from all of the landlord meetings that I attend and everybody that I speak to, I think in cases where the tenants have clearly shown communication and willingness to pay there, and just falling short or struggling slightly, landlords have been very reasonable, put payment plans in place, worked with their lettings agencies, given rent holidays, which can be picked up at a later date when their income is improved. So I do think that I know that definitely the circle that I'm in, landlords have been very reasonable with their tenants, and flexible in terms of payments and those payments that they've been received. So I'm not entirely sure how people are so much in debt, renters are so much in debt and rent arrears. But there are tenants that are out there, that will choose to go out and purchase they can't pay their rent this month because they've gone out and purchased a 52-inch flat screen TV, and I do think that there are lots of cases that are out there where that type of behavior is happening. But where tenants, are capable of paying and just choosing not to and spending their money elsewhere, there is a pot of money that's been put aside, or has been urged to put aside, of I think it's around 270 million, and that will be put forward to help renters that are suffering, will be looked at, I think, or should be looked at. I'm not sure whether it will. I haven't seen it come out yet, but it should be looked at on a case-by-case basis and genuine affordability, because where tenants have chosen not to pay, but actually, looking at bank statements and things like that, they are outspending their money elsewhere, and just due to the fact that landlords aren't able to evict due to rent arrears, etc., and then stay, and all of the help from the government, etc., and the new regulations that have come in, I do think there's some people that are taking advantage. So I really think that when this money comes available, it needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis, and those that have taken advantage of the system and the good nature of their landlords, and deliberately put themselves into a position of being homeless in the future, once the possession is granted back to the landlord, I don't think help should be, I know this is probably me being harsh, but those of you that know me, I'm a very fair person. I don't think that they should be helped. At the end of the day, they have, in my opinion, and I'm sure there's many of you that will disagree, and I'm not being heartless here, I'm being reasonable. I do think that there are some people that have deliberately put themselves or chosen to put themselves in that position by spending their money elsewhere and taking advantage of the system. Right, enough of that harping on there. So guys, I'm gonna, so one of the things, the good things about this is, of course, it's very clear, there are grounds that we can evict a tenant, and the notice periods are reflected within those grounds. And one of those is, of course, antisocial behaviour. And I'm going to share a few slides with you shortly, and I'll go through this in depth of what's classified as that. But the definition of antisocial behaviour is, is determined by a series of factors, including, context, location, community tolerance, quality of life, and expectations of the individuals. So as a result of, one person would class something or consider something as antisocial behaviour may actually be acceptable to another. So we're going to look at that in a little bit more depth. So I'm going to share some slides with you. Guys, if you have any questions during the whole of the process, please just pop them in the chat box, and we'll address them at the end during question time. But before I share these slides, of course, we do have, I'm not going to bring her on just yet. In fact, she's not online just yet. So hopefully, fingers crossed, she will join us by the time I've come to the end of my slides. But we do have Dr. Wendy Sneddon, which is one of our international and UK mentors with Your Freedom Empire, and she is based up in Scotland, and she's going to be talking to you today about Scottish updates and the property market in Scotland. So for those of you that are interested in Scotland, that will be a very useful session. It's going to be a very light session where you can ask questions, and Wendy is just going to talk to you about her experience and knowledge within the property market in Scotland. Because as you know, there is a different legal system in Scotland and different legislation. So guys, I thought it would be a good idea to share with you essentials on you as a landlord and protecting yourself as a landlord. So I've put this into a 10-step process, or 10 points that you need to be aware of. And we're going to run through the essentials of what you need to do to make sure that you have everything in place prior to taking on a tenancy, to make sure that if you do come to evict a tenant or you want possession of that property, that process will be smooth and paperwork isn't going to delay that process due to the fact of you not having it in place on commencement of tenancy. So I'm going to share these with you now. So the first one, and some of these are pretty obvious, but some of them you may not have heard of, but it's very good just to have a checklist there. So the first one we need to be making sure that we are doing, or our lettings agency are doing, is a right to rent check. So here in the UK, and the reason I'm highlighting this is because many of you are international. Here in the UK, you have to make sure that the tenant is legally allowed to be renting here in the UK. And so we have to carry out a right to rent check. The documents with the tenants have to be recorded, and we have to keep copies of those documents on file as well. So that's number one. Number two is we have to make sure that the tenant has seen and that the property has an energy performance certificate. Now this is an EPC certificate is just an energy performance rating of that particular property. And the reason that the tenant has to see this is because they have to check their affordability. If the performance of the property is poor, they have to make sure that they can pay not only their rent but afford their gas and electricity as well. So it's very important. Now the current rating is E or above, and there are speculations, or there are rumours that will change. There was lots of conversations about it last year. Whether they will bring it in now, I'm not entirely sure. But you have to make sure that the property is performing at a decent level there, E or above, and a certificate has to be presented to the tenant prior to commencement of their tenancy. An energy performance certificate will last up to 10 years. Of course, if you have made any modifications to the property, you may want to get a new certificate carried out. And of course, if you are buying a distressed property and doing the property up, putting a new boiler in there, or a new damp-proof course and things like that, double glazing, etc., then of course that will all improve the energy performance rating of your property. So you would want a new certificate to be carried out. You just need to speak to your lettings agency to get the certificates carried out. You can also there's lots of sites online that will actually do these as well for you. So there's lots of services out there that can provide this type of certificate. It's very inexpensive. You're looking at around £80 for a certificate to be carried out. And like I said, it lasts up to 10 years, but it is a must in terms of eviction process and paperwork being in place. Number 3 is a valid gas safety certificate. So this is a certificate that you have to have carried out on your property if the property has gas, of course. If it's an electric supply and there's no gas to the property, you don't have to have a gas safety certificate, but you do have to have a gas safety certificate. This needs to be done on an annual basis, and this will cost you anywhere, depending on your negotiation skills and where you are situated, it will cost you anywhere from around £60 up to around £120 per year. This has to be carried out by a qualified gas safety engineer, and like I said, has to be done on an annual basis. The tenant has to have seen this. It has to be in their moving pack, and you guys will have a copy of it. And there's 3 different copies with this, so your lettings agency will supply you with a copy of this. Then you have to make sure that the electric in the property is safe. So you have to have an electrical installation condition report carried out, which is an electricity certificate on the property. Now, this normally lasts up to 5 years, and again, it will cost you around £120. It will be reported within the certificate on how long that certificate will be valid for. On a new installation, it's normally, so if you've had a brand new rewire, etc., then it's normally 10 years by default. But if you are just making modifications, then it will be a 5-year certificate. Unless there has been anything that's been highlighted by the electrician. Like I said, this will cost you around £120, and you also need to do this on change of tenancy as well. Then the next thing, if we are supplying any portable appliances to the property that we are renting out, we have to have a PAT test carried out. So again, this is very inexpensive, but it is on an annual basis, and you have to have a PAT test carried out on any electrical portable appliances that you are putting into that property. Anything that the tenants brings in themselves, of course, it is their responsibility and not ours, but anything we supply to the property for the use of the tenant or tenants, if it's a HMO, we have to make sure that they are PAT tested on an annual basis. The electricians it doesn't have to be carried out by a qualified electrician. There is a test. Many lettings agencies will have, they will have, it's like a little box that you have to plug the appliances in, click a button, it says pass or fail. They put a little sticker on the appliance to say that it's passed, and it produces a report. So it's very easy to do. I'm not suggesting that any of you guys, our time is very valuable, and any of you guys that are that are looking to get into property, you don't want to be PAT testing your own appliances. So I very much recommend that you outsource this, but it doesn't have to be a qualified electrician. They do have to pass the test, and they do have to have the correct equipment in place to carry out this. Then the next thing is a Legionella assessment or a Legionella test. So it is our legal responsibility to make sure that tenants are safe and the water that the tenants are using within our properties are safe. Okay, so we have to do, your lettings agents will have a prevention plan in place. They will actually, you can ask them, this is one of the questions you can ask them, what is your Legionella prevention plan? And it may be that if the property is sat empty for a certain period of time, the system is flushed prior to a tenant moving in. Hot water is kept hot, cold water is kept cold, etc. But it may be that if you have a cold water tank, you have to have an assessment, a Legionella risk assessment carried out, in which case it has to be done by a qualified person. It will actually be very similar to your fire risk assessments, etc., where they will do a full assessment of the water and the condition of the water within the property. So if you have a cold water tank, you have to have this done. If you don't, then the prevention plan and making sure that you're taking measures to make sure that the systems are flushed prior to the tenants moving in and the water is safe to use, then that is sufficient. Ask your lettings agency about that prevention plan that they have, or the process that they follow. If it is a commercial, you have to have the Legionella risk assessment carried out and a test carried out as well. I've recently done one on a large commercial building, and it cost me, I believe, £349 for the whole process. So it would be a lot less on a buy-to-let or a HMO if you had to have this carried out. But again, it is something that has to be put into place to make sure that you are covered if your tenants contract Legionella and it's from your property, that there has been measures put in place to protect your tenants. We have to make sure that the water is safe for the tenants to use. And then, of course, with this one now, so we have to publicise, or our lettings agencies have to publicise all fees. Now, since the tenant fee ban came into place, this is, less, of course, that has to be publicised, but anything that the tenant has to, any cost that the tenant has to absorb prior to moving into the property has to be in the advertisement. So if your lettings agencies are doing this and you're going through a lettings agency, then they will cover all of this for you. But if you are putting advertisements out there yourself, you have to make sure that the deposit that is going to be paid has to be stated exactly how much, the rent if it's in advance, and also if you are asking the tenant for a holding fee, that would also have to be recorded as well. So just make sure that any of your advertisements that are put out there are publicising all fees that are associated to the rental of your property. And then the next one is this is really, I'm going to go through two different elements here. So this is insurance and making sure that the people that you are working with are have the correct insurances and are registered with the correct people, etc. So first of all, this is for your lettings agency, or more for your lettings agency. You want to make sure that they've got professional indemnity insurance. If you are doing rent to rent, then you will also, we would recommend that you have this in place as well. But if you're going through a lettings agency, just check that they have the correct insurance in place. If you are also doing sourcing, so if you are sourcing property, I would recommend that you have this in place as well. Well, you have to have this in place, in my opinion. So the next thing is you have to make sure that your lettings agency is registered with the Property Ombudsman or the PRS to make sure that you are covered. If you are again doing rent to rent, we recommend that you register with the Property Ombudsman as well. If you are sourcing, again, you would have to register with the Property Ombudsman. If you are a lettings agency again, or you're using a lettings agency, they have to be registered with the ICO, so the Information Commissioner's Office. If you are doing sourcing, you also have to be registered with them. If you are doing rent to rent, we would also recommend again that you register with the ICO. So this is a bit more general. So building insurance, of course, us as landlords and investors, we need to make sure that we have sufficient building insurance in place. We need to make sure that we have public liability. Content insurance, of course, is optional. You know, you don't have to have content insurance on your rental properties, but it's entirely up to you whether you go down that route. But I put it in there anyway. So I will have content insurance on anything that I'm supplying to my HMOs. On my buy-to-lets, I don't. It's the responsibility as the to the tenant. If I'm doing a HMO, I have content insurance on the stuff that I provide to the property, but I don't have it is up to the tenant to get content insurance on their own personal belongings. So in cases, guys, where you have HMOs where there's no locks on the bedroom doors, it will be very, very difficult for the tenants to get content insurance, just as a side note there for you. If there are locks on the doors, then they will have no issue. They can insure their own personal belongings. You can insure your furniture, etc., that you've put to the property, and everybody's happy. But again, like I said, that's optional. Rent guarantee insurance is something that I would urge people to take out moving forward. You know, I've spoken about this before in the past, but I really do think, guys, moving forward with all of the changes, the uncertainty of, you know, with the recession, job losses that are, you know, that are going to come about October time, and lots of people that are being made redundant, you need to be making sure that before you put a tenant into the property now, that they qualify for rent guarantee insurance, and you as a landlord take up that opportunity to protect yourself and your income.
It's fine. It's working on my phone now.
We can hear you, Wendy.
Oh, sorry.
Right, so Wendy's on. Hi, Wendy.
Hello.
Oh, I'm just coming on, just finishing up on these slides, and then I'll bring you on shortly. So the next one, guys, is essentials. So we have to make sure that the tenant has seen a how to rent guide. A how to rent guide, I would say, guys, you can go and download it, have a read of it, and it will very much educate you as a landlord as well. So I think that it is very important, if we are going to be letting our properties out, that we understand what is in this guide, and we understand our responsibility as a landlord, because what the government has done here, and you know, this has been out for many years, but what they have done here is educate the tenant on your legal responsibility as a landlord. So if you haven't read it, I absolutely recommend that you do. This has to be presented to the tenant again prior to tenancy commencement. We have to make sure that if we are taking a deposit, that we protect that deposit. All certificates have to be presented to the tenant as well. So your energy performance certificate, your gas safety certificate, your electricity certificate, any risk assessments that have been carried out as well. You have to have information in there as well about your smoke alarm testing. So for instance, if you're a HMO, it may be that every Friday at 2 o'clock, someone will do a sound alarm. So if that is your process, and based off your fire risk assessment, that's what you've determined is the process moving forward, then that has to be highlighted to the tenant, and there needs to be a document there stating that the tenant knows exactly when the fire alarms are going to be tested, etc., and the process behind that. We also need to make sure that we've got an overall document that actually says that confirmation of all documents have been supplied to the tenant, and the tenant has signed that to say that they have received all documents as well. And then the last one, guys, on this 10-step process is, if you are taking a deposit, it has to be protected with the DPS or equivalent, and you have to protect that within 30 days of receiving that deposit. Okay, if you don't, then the tenant can look to recall rent, and there's just, you know, there's free sites, there's free DPS schemes out there, and there's no reason for you not to actually move forward with it. It's not worth the hassle if you come to evict a tenant and you haven't given them the correct information. Okay, so guys, if you're taking a deposit, then make sure it is protected within the 30 days of receiving that. If you're using a lettings agency, they will do all of this for you and supply you with the relevant information. Just make sure that your lettings agency confirms and shows you proof that information has been displayed to the tenant on where the deposit is protected, etc., and that information around that. So that's your 10-step process. But I thought it very good idea. I kind of touched on this on the update, so I've cheated a little bit here, but I'll just quickly repeat it for you, and you can have it in a screenshot there as well. So development effectively extended or has extended the Coronavirus Act through to now March 2021. Clearly my brain doesn't like the word March today, does it? I keep screwing up on that one. Pardon me. As of the 29th of August, as I said a little earlier, in the result of tenants incurring rent arrears or misleading information, landlords and agents must allow 6 months before gaining possession. If the rent arrears exceed 6 months rental payments, the notice period will automatically go to 4 weeks. A number of other scenarios as well, which we kind of touched on earlier, but in the case of domestic abuse, 2 weeks notice is sufficient, where landlords are seeking possession as a result of antisocial behaviour, which is what, rent arrears or antisocial behaviour is what we would normally seek possession over, that will be 4 weeks notice. Where tenants are required to vacate due to failed right to rent checks, 12 weeks notice will be required. So just on the ending of tenancy then, so the Crime and Disorder Act 1998 states or says that acting antisocial behaviour, because this is going to be what many people are going to move forward with now, I think. So acting in a manner that has caused or was likely to cause harassment, alarm or distress to one or more persons of the same household outside of the defendant itself. So falling under antisocial behaviour then is drug, substances, misuse, drug dealing, of course, so any use of drugs, illegal drugs in the property is a grounds there as antisocial behaviour. Nuisance behaviour, litter, which can be an issue with HMOs as well, so rubbish and litter can be classed as antisocial behaviour. Prostitution, which about 10 years ago we had that. I could tell you many stories about that particular property, and Paul spent a lot of time there as well, so I'm not sure what that says, but he managed to sort a few issues out there. But prostitution is classed as antisocial behaviour. Noise nuisance is classed as antisocial behaviour. Rowdy behaviour, of course, again, is classed as antisocial behaviour. Criminal damage to your property is classed as antisocial behaviour. Drinking in the street, etc. But also intimidation and harassment as well is also classed as antisocial behaviour. Guys, there's a few grounds there. I'm sure that will be modified, changed, and it's a very grey area, but just giving you an idea there of that 4 weeks notice and what falls under antisocial behaviour, so that you've got a clear kind of view of what's acceptable and what isn't. And then, guys, just lastly, I'd like to say that, the eviction process can be quite a daunting process. If you are looking to tackle that yourself, then the cost of getting it wrong can result into obviously prolonging you getting possession of your property, and which is then costing you more time, more money, more court fees, etc. So I would highly recommend, if you are going through the process of eviction or need needing to evict someone, that you enlist a specialist to be able to do that for you. And there's a few names up on the board there of different companies. There's many others out there, and I would, like I said, recommend that to get it right, so that everything is done correctly, it's been done on the correct date, outside of your fixed terms, etc., and things like that, making sure that everything is done right and you get possession of your property back in a timely manner, and it's not just keep thrown out of court and then you have to give notice again and get another court date, etc. I would highly recommend going through a specialist. Right, okay, not lastly then, I've got one more thing for you. Then this is more of your area research qualifying an area. So many people say to me, well, how do you check affordability? And this will change, different companies will do it slightly different to other people, and you may do it slightly different to me. But what I actually use for affordability, or to qualify the affordability of my tenants, is we look at the monthly rent, we times it by 12, we times by 100, then we divide that by 35, and then that will equal the salary that they need to earn in order to afford to live at the property I am renting out. So guys, feel free to use that formula. Like I said, many people will do it different. We all have our own quirky ways of doing things, but that's how I do it. And that will very easily be able to say to you, based off, I use this for area research as well, because with our area research, we can actually look at the average wage of a person within an area. So straight away, we know what their salary is. So we can work this then backwards and say, well, if the average rent is this and the average salary is this, this is what we need to provide, and this is the maximum amount we can pay for that particular property type or rental. So it's a very useful tool to actually use as part of your area research, but also obviously, of course, to qualify your tenants. So hopefully, guys, that was useful to you. We do have Wendy on. Guys, if you have any questions about what I've just covered, and then when Wendy comes on now, she will, of course, as well. Hi. She will, of course, no doubt you guys will have questions off the back of what Wendy is going to cover with us also. So, hi, Wendy. How are you? Oh, we've lost you.
Hello, good morning. I'm great, thank you. Finally got here. Oh, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but your camera's off. There you go, back on.
You want to see me?
Right.
Yes, got here finally.
Yeah, brilliant. No, that's great. Just in time as well, I think. It worked out well in the end. So I'm just going to move us up to the top here, or actually, because you don't have slides, do you, for this session? So let me just.
No.
This is Hayley messing about with the controls while I'm live. Never a good thing for me, really, in technology. So right, okay. So I don't know whether you heard some of the stuff that we covered, but we just covered the fundamentals for landlords to make sure that they're protected as a landlord moving forward, and a few of the changes with legislation recently, and notice periods and things like that. And so you're, of course, majority of the people that actually probably already know you, some of our regulars that are on, but there may be a few that are on there that are not aware who Dr. Wendy Sneddon is. So do you want to just give us a brief introduction of yourself, and what you're all about, and then just jump into what you are going to be covering today with our listeners?
Okay, yeah, so I'm Dr. Wendy Sneddon. Wendy's fine. I based up in Scotland, and I run several businesses, and I've been involved in property for centuries, but officially as an investor probably over the last 5 years. And I'm working closely with Paul and Hayley and the Your Freedom Empire team to deliver the training, which is coming soon. I've got a mixture of strategies. So I've done commercial to residential conversions. We've got some buy-to-let properties, and we've also got some serviced accommodation. And through those, we've done buy-to-rent, and we've also done rent-to-rent. So kind of done a little bit of each strategy, if you like, to sort of test it out. So mainly invest in Scotland at the moment, but starting to look at coming down further south and moving into HMOs is kind of the next step. So that's me. I also work as an HR consultant, so helping people kind of, as you start to build your business and employ teams, then I can help with that area as well.
Fantastic, that's great. So Wendy, of course, because you are based in Scotland and that's kind of like your area of investment, we thought that it would be a good idea if you could kind of talk to us about the Scottish market and any changes that have happened due to COVID, etc. And what's the general feel of property in Scotland right now, and just your overview of all of that.
Yeah, so kind of echoing what you talked about earlier in terms of the landlord challenges and the eviction changes. We've got the same in Scotland. They have just announced a huge fund that's now available for tenants to get support to pay their rent. So hopefully that will ease the kind of pressure on landlords. So there's less and less kind of an issue around that, hopefully. So that was just announced in the last couple of days. So I don't know how long it's going to take for that to come into effect. We've been really lucky and it hasn't affected us, touch wood, so far with the tenants we've got. Generally, there's a really positive vibe about property in Scotland. We've got houses in Glasgow selling in 16 days. And in Edinburgh selling on an average of 17 days, which is way faster than anywhere else in the UK. Of course, along with that, there's a price growth. In Edinburgh, they're seeing a price growth of about 3%. And in Glasgow, the price growth is around about 2.5%. So I think across the UK, the average price growth is about 2.5%. So we're seeing it higher in Edinburgh, which is kind of standard for Edinburgh prices anyway. If you move outside of the city and go to the kind of suburbs and the smaller towns and villages, then that price growth is still there to a certain degree, but this is because people are now starting to look for properties with garden space. They're looking for that extra room, so they know if they go out to the country, they're going to get a little bit more for their money potentially, which I guess is probably similar to the rest of the UK, to be honest. We're seeing a surge in purchases in a place called the East Neuk of Fife. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's the kind of eastern corner. Absolutely beautiful location. Lots of cute little seaside villages. A lot of farmland. And it seems that a lot of people are coming from the towns and cities to buy properties in this area, probably as holiday homes, because it's such a nice location, and with more people choosing to holiday in the UK.
Oh, we lost you.
In those areas as well. So it has been really really interesting, really buoyant market at the moment. House builders are getting approval to build projects right across Scotland. So we're seeing new house building really popular at the moment. Of course, our lovely RICS surveyors are seeing the doom and gloom side of it. They're looking a lot further ahead. They're looking to next year and kind of seeing, they're being really cautious about the sort of medium term. They're expecting a significant decrease in property values. I think in one of the reports I read, it was minus 31% next year. So that's huge. As a result of that, they tend to be downvaluing properties a little bit. So I know a few people that have had issues with that. So I think it's about really getting to know your surveyors in Scotland and understanding kind of how they're valuing and getting a commitment of the valuation from them, as you can up front. So that's been really interesting. Of course, we're expecting job losses next year and the government support to kind of tail off. So it's an unknown, but at the moment, lots of activity. On a personal level, I've found it quite challenging. We were stuck on a bridge, so that bridge was coming to an end in the summer, and the applications for finance that we put in to get out of that bridge early in the year hit just as COVID hit. And of course, the loan to values were then dropped. First of all, the products were pulled, the loan to value was then dropped, and we weren't going to get what we needed. So we've had to kind of hang back and wait. And what we're finding now is we've got 5 refinances going through at the moment. The interrogation we're getting from the lenders is huge. The mainstream banks are not interested in lending finance to anyone unless it's a CBILS. So if you were looking at traditional banks, then it's a complete waste of time at the moment. So the sort of, for the rest of the market, they're just being really tough about their criteria. And that's interesting. Never really experienced that before. I'm getting questions coming back. Bank statements are being microanalyzed. And they're really looking into kind of credit histories. Also for commercial finance as well, which traditionally from a commercial point of view, they were just looking at the property and the income the property would generate for you, whereas now they actually want a whole background. So it's been really it's been really challenging. We've got sort of delays on a lot of kind of finance coming through. However, we're almost at the end of that. We've got we know we've got money coming in the next few weeks, and so we're really excited and getting ready to kind of start to look for our next project. I have been working on other projects for a charity, which is really exciting. So we're looking at properties, and I've been teaching the charity how to purchase properties themselves. So traditionally, they would rent properties from landlords, and they were subject on a couple of occasions to that landlord increasing the rent to the stage where they had to give the building back. And on another occasion, the landlord pulled the building because he decided he was going to sell it, to use it for something different. So the charity being able to actually buy and own their own property has been quite novel for them. So we've gone through the process, found a property, got the planning permission, and we're about to launch something called a community share offer. So it's where we're going to enable the community around to buy shares in the property, and they'll get a return of up to 5%, depending on how the market goes.
Wow, that's really creative.
It's really exciting. Yeah. It has been done. Community shares are quite common around the UK for various projects. It's been done for a similar project down in Cornwall, and it was really successful. So it's the first time it's being done in Scotland. It gets launched on Monday. So it's a really nice way for people to invest in a kind of socially minded way, if you like. Okay, the returns aren't huge, but based on what people might be getting, if you've got a couple of grand in the bank, then it's a nice way to get more than the 0.01% that you might be getting at the moment. So that's really exciting. The share offer launches on Monday, and we're starting to put out tenders now for the work to do the conversion. So everything will be ready for getting the project started at the end of the year.
That's awesome. Brilliant. So in terms of lettings in Scotland, I nearly said Wales then, I don't know why. In terms of lettings in Scotland, across your portfolio and maybe landlords that you're working with or network with, how are they finding it with their tenants? Is there many people that are falling into arrears, or is it
Yeah, I mean, in the groups I'm in, I think the majority of landlords in these groups are quite socially minded and are really there to help their tenants. And that's what the majority of people have done. When they've come into the group with a question about an issue, the feedback has generally been sit down with a tenant, have a chat with them, see how you can offer help. And I think because a lot of them have taken that attitude, they've managed to minimise. So I'm not hearing from the landlords in my networks, I'm not hearing a lot of issues, the majority of them. And because the government have given a lot of help to tenants to stop them from going into arrears, I think that's really helped the situation as well. I think we're all a bit nervous about the extension to March next year. But again, they've extended the help. So, in line with that, then, people are fairly positive.
Yeah, good. So because in my portfolio, I haven't really seen much of an impact at all. There's a handful of people that are struggling, and we're in communication with them, or my lettings agency is. But I have had a lot of people that
perhaps have got that were in arrears prior to the COVID, and that's obviously continued over. They haven't been able to force that possession. So there's been quite a few of those. But not many that are genuinely affected by COVID because of the amount of help. And this is what I do think that if people don't want to pay, they won't pay, regardless of what help is out there. I think there is a lot of that, although only from hearsay, because like I said, I'm not seeing it myself, but I have heard a lot of people talking.
I don't know how you found the serviced accommodation side of things, but for us, on March the 23rd, all bookings were cancelled in our serviced accommodation properties. So that was a big issue. And the way our businesses have been set up, we weren't eligible for the support that perhaps other businesses were. So that was an interesting kind of learning. We did, however, manage to get contractors into 4 of the properties. So that kept them. One of the properties we found a tenant to go in long term. And
lots of people are doing that in London.
So at the moment we've 2 empty properties up in Aberdeen, where we just got them filled again. July was fabulous, August was looking great, and then Aberdeen locked down again and we got more cancellations. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster with that side, but having that balanced mixed portfolio meant we were okay. I think that's a message to get across.
Spread your risk, definitely.
Absolutely.
Because if you focus solely on one particular strategy and one particular area, if then you are at risk. So definitely.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So in terms of the house prices, you said that the surveyors are actually looking at a down value at the moment. What's been the typical loan to value that they've been offering?
We're getting
the bank off the back
generally
of
60 to 65%. We are managing now. We've got one that's just gone in, and they are going to give us 75%. So that's been quite good. But we have had to settle on a 65% deal for 4 of the properties, which is not great, but it's better than the 55% that they offered us back in March when they pulled the products. So but I guess the equity sits there, and in a couple of years we will be able to look at potentially changing that if we need to. We can pull money out if we want to.
That's great. So in terms of the house price drop, though, the prediction you said was 33% or something?
Minus 31% was what was quoted in one of the RICS reports. So I don't know whether that's end of next year, but
we will see a decline, and I've said this from the very beginning. And everybody's saying, "Oh, I'm not partaking in the recession. House prices aren't going to drop." When we say drop, we don't mean drop off the edge of a cliff. We mean like right now the market is very buoyant. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of help, and house prices are holding in some areas. Actually, they are going up in value. In some areas, they have dropped, such as London has dropped. So there's micro areas that are performing better or worse than others, but there will gradually be a decline, and I think that decline, the demand, the pent-up demand that we spoke about week in, week out, has already started to plateau. People with the furlough coming to an end have already now started to pull back on their spending, and also looking at their longevity of their employment, whether they're actually going to be employed next year and be able to afford the properties. Banks have already started to do that. Like you said, high street banks just aren't interested at this moment in time, and especially for investment, but there's even for residential, they've put their criteria they've changed their criteria. They're asking more questions, and they've deliberately changed their criteria because of affordability, not having the funds to be able to actually take on new applications, or the bandwidth to stretch out further. banks are feeling it as well. At the end of the day, they are also a business. They're still very active at this moment in time with applications that have already gone through, but new applications coming through. They're making the criteria stricter. Therefore, affordability is going to drop, which naturally will then have a negative impact on the demand. Because so it's always like, it's quite refreshing. Well, not refreshing, because obviously I don't want it to happen, or maybe I do. I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, we can make money in any market, but it's quite refreshing to watch how easy and simple it actually is if you just watch for the right things. And house prices will gradually start to fall, and you know, it will start over the next couple of months, and then we will see it gradually fall over next year. But it's not going to be a point blank right that it dropped off. It didn't last time. You know, we had a crash 2007, 2008. You know, it was still declining over a gradual process. So well, and 2009, you know, so it's not overnight. And many people think, oh, you know, perhaps your opinion was wrong or this, because they assume that it's going to just drop. It doesn't. It will gradually, the decline will drop off, which will naturally then will reduce the purchase price or sale price, because the demand isn't there. So it is, there's nothing you can do about it. And it's in any business. It doesn't matter whether it's property, it doesn't matter if it's retail, you will always have that supply and demand. And that balance has to be correct in order to keep the prices rising or stable. And it is going to be the balance is going to tip.
And what's interesting is, so talking to a few of the estate agents in Glasgow, you know, people are paying sort of 10 to 20% over asking price for properties, which is kind of great for them and their commissions. The worrying thing will be in 6 months' time, if we do see a minus 31% in prices. If you're holding the property, then it's maybe not such an issue, but if the value of the property drops down, then suddenly your loan to value on your mortgage product changes. And I've been in the position in the past where the bank have come back and said, you're going to need to pay some money because of this value, because of this gap. So it's just something people need to be aware of across your portfolio.
You don't want
to be in that position.
So I mean, do you genuinely think 31%? I mean, I personally don't think it's going to be, and this is obviously just a personal opinion, I think we're going to see around 11. And if I was to say worst case scenario in my head and how I've planned it out, I'd say 22, between 11 and 22. But I think about 11. I think we're going to see about an 11% drop. So as long as you're not over leveraging, and you know, and of which banks aren't allowing you to do that at this moment in time, because they're naturally anticipating the fall. And as long as you're not, you know, I mean, it's not like 10 years ago where we could have 100% lending, and then we would be buggered basically, even at a 10% drop, you know. But now, of course, it doesn't work like that. So, you know, as long as you're not over leveraged and you're able to make those payments, then you're fine. And the demand is there, and the property is rented out. There's no real issue there. Of course, the issue is if you need to sell. And so as long as you don't need to sell, you're fine. So guys, do you have any questions for Wendy or myself? I've got some, I think my screen's frozen. There are questions there, but I can't scroll. Can you see them, Wendy?
No, I can't see the questions. Oh, here we go. All messages are private.
It should be in chat.
No, for some reason.
Guys, if you don't have any questions, so now's the time to ask if you do have any questions. Whether it be about Scotland, Wendy, me, property, our opinion, what we've covered this morning, it doesn't matter. I don't have any questions coming through, which is the first time ever. which is what's making me think, well, something isn't working here.
There's a problem.
Yeah. But hopefully there just is no questions, and if that's the case, great.
I think one of the positive things about investing in Scotland is we have lots of lovely green space. So there's lots of land available, and there's also lots of the types of properties that people are looking for nice holiday accommodation, but also people are looking for extras so that if we have other lockdowns in the future, they're better prepared for it. So they're looking for that spare room that they can convert to an office, and they're looking for that outdoor space, or even space to put a garden office, I think. So there's lots of opportunities still in Scotland, despite the sort of price increases and the increase in demand. Commercial property seems to be suffering up here. I guess it's probably suffering everywhere. Rents are dropping, lots of empty properties, which of course provides a great opportunity for us to step in and convert them back to residential, and help increase the number of housing available.
I mean, overall, guys, okay, I've got a question for you, Wendy.
Okay.
Are you buying right now?
Not right now, no. We've been looking about. A lot of the things we've looked at are going to closing dates and going for over the asking price, and so our next thing we want to do on a residential basis is come into HMOs. So I'm coming down to visit you, Hayley, and going to have a look about. I am looking to buy commercial property because we've just put our pension fund into a SIP. And so now I'm working with a commercial sourcing agent to look for a sort of a CMO, a commercial multiple occupation, so a serviced office type space. So whilst there's a lot of vacant offices coming about because big companies don't need them because they're letting everyone work from home, people who work for themselves, who maybe don't have the space at home, are still looking for single office spaces. Mm-hmm. So there's a demand for space like that. So that's what we're looking for at the moment, is a building where we can convert into single office space with bearing COVID measures, putting all of those into consideration when we're converting the building.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing out of this will be commercial to residential opportunities. Yes. Absolutely, the commercial lenders are looking at much lower loan to values, and their appetite is less at this moment in time for offices, etc., due to obviously the fact of the demand dropping off there, it is expected that will drop further. But with the new planning reform that's come in place and the commercial to residential permitted planning, that will all help. And of course, with the housing crisis, it's great. The properties will lend themselves well to residential and can be easily converted. They're normally in very good locations as well, with good transport links, etc. So the demand for residential will always be there. But of course, you have to check all of that out on a case-by-case basis. But there will be a lot of commercial to residential opportunities out of this recession and pandemic. Right. So I think that's it. We're cutting it short today, aren't we? We've actually nearly finished in an hour, which is great. So we don't really have any. We don't have any questions coming through. I can't see any questions coming through, and we've covered all of our slides. So I think it's probably best just for me to jump onto my updates now, and just say thank you very much, Wendy. Thanks for your insights on Scotland, and your opinion on the market there. And thanks for your time this morning.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. Bye. Right, so guys, I'm going to jump straight on to, of course, we've done questions and there were no questions. So either that's really, really good or really bad? Let's go with really good, especially as I've had such a fantastic week. So guys, get yourself registered for our Premier Investment Vault. So that is www.premierinvestmentvault.co.uk. Make sure that you are registered. You do not want to miss out on that. So that is our sourcing platform that will allow you to have access to deals that sourcing agents upload, and for you as sourcing agents, access to the investors that have registered, and you will be able to communicate within that site with your communication area, look at deals, ask questions to each other, check that all of their paperwork is in place and things like that, which will all be visible and transparent through the site. Use the escrow systems and just have a little bit of a protection there for you, knowing that qualified sourcing agents are registered, we've checked them out, and that you guys as investors can have access to deals throughout the whole of the UK, and be able to communicate with the teams on the ground. All of them have to have a one-stop shop, and all of them have to have the correct insurances, be registered with the correct bodies, and have source 3 deals. So guys, they are as qualified as they come. They are checked out as any other platform that's out there would check them out, and it is free. So get yourself registered. Of course, there will be a part 2 to this, which is a paid for version, and that will be presented to you, but there is no pressure. You can use that element of this, and the idea here, guys, is to connect good people with good people. That's it. Okay, so get yourself registered to that and get access to deals. Then, of course, our website, guys, we are Your Freedom Empire. We are a training organization. We offer all elements of property training through every strategy. We carry our training out live, in class, online and on demand. So we actually have all, we live stream, we are doing live classes, we are doing live mentorships, we are doing online mentorships, we are doing on-demand training where you can just buy a course and watch it at your own leisure, and you get lifetime access to that as well. So we actually are the full shebang. We do everything inside of property. We also look at business, communications and negotiations, and health and wellness. So we look at the overall you, and we are at www.yourfreedomempire.co.uk. Of course, we are still running these free consultation calls. So every week I say I don't know how much longer, and every week I completely forget, and I've just got this slotted into my diary, and all of my other stuff is just popping around it. So we'll continue this just because the demand is there, guys. If you want to call with me or one of my mentors just to discuss your situation, there is no sale, there is no upsell. It is a genuine 30-minute conversation about you, where you are, what you're looking to do, or if you're in a sticky situation and you want an expert's advice. It is our way very much of just giving back and helping people out during these uncertain times, and you know, having an expert there to just drop a line to. So if you are interested in that, guys, you just need to pop an email across to admin@yourfreedomempire.co.uk and pop in the subject box there, free call, and then a diary will be sent out to you, and you can pick your slot and who you want that call with. And then, of course, questions. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to email them over to admin@yourfreedomempire.co.uk, and pop in the subject box there, questions, webinar questions. Of course, as well, guys, you know, we have our YouTube channel. So please feel free to like and subscribe if you like the videos and you've watched live, but pop onto our YouTube channel and just pop a comment in the comment box. We really appreciate it, and it all helps with the growth. You know, you can share your links and invite people on. You don't have to be part of Your Freedom Empire to be part of these webinars. it is actually out there for everyone. And so if you think someone will benefit from the information that we are putting out there, or someone that is looking to get into property business or looking after their health, then of course they are welcome to join us on our webinar, or subscribe and like to our Facebook, Instagram and YouTube channel. So guys, thank you for your support as always. It is a genuine pleasure. It is Friday, it's pizza, which is very good news, always good news to have pizza. But I'm going to say have an awesome weekend, and I'll see you again next week. Goodbye for now.